They were one of the most publicized couples of the 90s. The story of JFK Jr and Carolyn Bessette is short-lived, ultimately ending in a shocking tragedy. This is Avery After Dark, and I'm your host, Avery Ross. Thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode. I'm so happy you're here. If you're new here, welcome. On Avery After Dark, I cover everything from mysteries to true crime cases to the chilling unexplained. So if that's up your alley, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment while you're here, and turn on post notifications. I upload new videos every week, and I don't want you to ever miss out. Now, let's get into today's story. John Kennedy Jr., often referred to as John or JFK Jr., was the son of 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, and First Lady Jackie Kennedy. From his childhood years at the White House, JFK Jr. was the subject to a lot of publicity. In America, the Kennedys were viewed as American royalty, and everyone had their eyes on JFK Jr. He had big shoes to fill. Everyone believed he would follow in his father's footsteps, land a career in politics, even one day maybe become president of the United States. There were big expectations. As he grew into manhood, he became a popular social figure in Manhattan. He was a trained lawyer and in 1995 launched George magazine. But his social life was really center stage. JFK was one of the most eligible bachelors of the 90s. He was followed, hounded by the media really. Whatever he did, it was front page news. John dated a number of well-known actresses and models, and he met Carolyn Bessette when she was working as a director of publicity for Calvin Klein in 1992. And a few years later, in 1994, the two began dating. Now, John was used to living in the public eye, being a Kennedy, but Carolyn was not. She was a very private person and was not ready nor equipped to handle public life. JFK Jr. even requested the paparazzi go easy on her, but they didn't. The two got married in a private small ceremony in 1996 in Georgia. And when the media found out they had secretly married, mass reporters were on the couple's front doorstep, and they hunted them. Paparazzi would follow JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette everywhere they went, posting up outside their apartment at every hour of the day. The amount of attention caused Carolyn to pull back from the public eye. She reportedly found it all very disorienting. She never gave an interview, she never spoke publicly, but their relationship, marriage, was a show for the public. Carolyn, who worked in fashion, told friends that she no longer could get a job without being accused of exploiting it for fame. And the couple didn't give the media anything to go on, really. So it was just the rumor mill. And rumors swirled about the couple's marriage in turmoil. About John cheating, about Carolyn cheating, substance use. One of their most infamous media moments was when they had a heated argument in Washington Square Park, during which John attempted to pull Carolyn's engagement ring from her finger. Yikes. Unfortunately for the couple, photographers were standing by to snap countless photos of the entire ordeal, which made headlines around the world. It was also rumored that Carolyn felt like an outsider with the Kennedy family. In 1999, after a lot of convincing, Carolyn agreed to accompany John to the wedding of John's cousin Rory in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, but said the only way she would go is if she could bring her sister Lauren Bessette along with them. A decision that would prove to be devastating. The plan was JFK Jr. was going to fly Carolyn and her sister Lauren on his new plane, a Piper Saratoga, to the event. This 6-seater plane was much more complicated to operate than his previous plane and had 300 horsepower, more than he was used to flying. John had a passion for flying but had avoided it for years to make his mother happy. She didn't want him to fly as she felt it was dangerous. But after she passed away in 1994, he felt he had fulfilled this obligation to her and began taking flying lessons, getting his pilot's license in 1998. So for this trip, the plan was they were going to drop Lauren off to spend time with friends in Martha's Vineyard, and John and Carolyn would head on to Rory's wedding. On the day of the flight, July 16, 1999, John was still recovering from a broken ankle and chose to make this trip without his instructor. Now, this instructor had offered to fly with John, knowing he didn't have very many hours of practice in this new plane. But John said no, he wanted to do it alone. Most likely one of the first times, if not the first time, he was making this trip alone in his new plane. So that evening, the three boarded the flight and departed from Fairfield, New Jersey around 8:30 p.m. John flying the plane with Carolyn and Lauren passengers sitting in the second row of seats. That night, weather was extremely hazy and there was limited visibility. So much so that numerous other pilots refused to fly that evening. And another issue. The group was originally supposed to leave around 6 p.m. when it was lighter out. But both John and Carolyn were running late that evening, so they took off later than planned, when it was dark. After taking off, for a 5-minute period starting at 8:49 p.m., John flew the plane close to American Airlines Flight 1484. Very close, actually. So much so that he actually scared the flight crew of that plane, but no collision occurred. After this, John flew along the coast for a while before making the decision to fly directly to Martha's Vineyard. Over the open ocean at 9:38 p.m., John began an unusual set of maneuvers, turning the plane left and then right. Very disoriented, John had lost track of where he was, in which direction the plane was even moving. Just a few minutes later, at 9:41 p.m., John slammed the plane into the ocean, nose first, off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. John, Carolyn, and Lauren were killed on impact. All three were very young. JFK Jr was 38, Carolyn was 33, and Lauren was 34. After days of searching, searchers found fragments of John's plane, and their bodies were recovered on July 21st. The official cause of the crash was spatial disorientation. The National Transportation Safety Board looked at the main cause of the crash probably being the lack of John's experience without an instructor in the overcast weather conditions that night. And the Bessette family lost 2 daughters that night. And John and Carolyn were only married for 3 years. The world was in shock when the news broke. That infamous Kennedy curse had struck again. Afterwards, in the press, there was much discussion about the Kennedy family. John's cousin Michael had died in a skiing accident just a year or so before this. And this wasn't the first incident with a Kennedy in the driver's seat ending in tragedy. On July 18, 1969, Ted Kennedy drove off a bridge in Chappaquiddick, an island adjacent to the Vineyard in Massachusetts, killing his companion, 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne. Ted fled the scene, leaving Mary Jo trapped in his car to drown, ultimately choosing to wait 10 hours to call police. That is horrific. But I gotta know, what are your thoughts on this case? Leave them in the comments. I always really look forward to getting your take. Thank you so much for subscribing to this channel. Next episode, I have so much more coming your way. Until then, I'm Avery Ross, and this is Avery After Dark.